And as we continue to vet the president, tonight we focus on another one of his controversial and radical appointments. Now, tonight we look at the president's former green job czar, a guy by the name of Van Jones. Now, Jones, a one-time self-proclaimed communist, resigned his post in March of 2009 amidst controversy after controversy. Now, let's look back at some of Jones' past lowlights and ask ourselves, what does this say not only about Van Jones himself, but about the president's judgment? Now, first there was this comment made about Republicans using some, well, less than tasteful language.
How were the Republicans able to push things through when they had less than 60 senators, but somehow we can't?
Well, the answer to that is they're
And then there was this comment.
Way to try to bring the price of energy down is simply to increase the supply. To begin to drill more, to drill offshore, to drill here, to drill there, to liquefy coal, to go with oil shale and tar sands, do whatever you can to get more petroleum into the system. And we heard our president saying just that. That's what he wants to do. And I hate to say this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but the president of the United States sounded like a crackhead when he said that. A little bit more. Just a little bit. Just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more petroleum. I can get some more, just get some more. It was shameful. Am I wrong?
And finally, we can't forget that in 2004, Van Jones allowed his name to be put on a 9/11 truther letter. Now, he later apologized for this and said it was a mistake. Here to help us with today's vetting process is the contributing editor of the American Spectator, Jeffrey Lord, and the president of American Commitment, that's Phil Kerpen, is with us, and he's also the author of Democracy Denied. Jeff, well, first of all, you hear these comments. Look at this background, avowed communist, 9/11 truther. It's all on the record. And one has to ask, why would Obama ever appoint somebody like this to such a high position of power?
The thing to remember, Sean, and I've been on the White House staff, you were vetted within an inch of your life to get on the White House staff. So when all of this came out, the first reaction was, oh, well, gee, how could this happen? It happened because people in the White House had him vetted, they knew his record, and they wanted him there. And they wanted him there because they agreed with him. This is what's going on within the Obama administration, whether Van Jones is there or not, and has been going on for President Obama's entire career.
Yeah. All right. You know, Phil, let me put up on the screen here. This is 3 years before Obama is elected president of the United States. This was an interview that Van Jones gave with the East Bay Express. And he said, I met all these young radical people of color. I mean, really radical, communists, anarchists. And it was like, well, this is what I need to be a part of. And I spent the next 10 years of my life working with a lot of these people that I met in jail, trying to be a revolutionary. I was a rowdy nationalist on April the 28th. And then the verdicts came down. He's talking about the Rodney King verdicts on April the 29th. He said, by August, I was a communist. But still he gets this position of power about Obama. I'll ask you the same question. What does it say about the president's judgment?
Well, I think it says a lot about the president's judgment. Of course, two of the chairmen of the transition team for Obama, John Podesta and Valerie Jarrett, had close ties, had long been fans of Van Jones' work. I call him Anthony Jones. He made up the name Van when he was in college because he said everyone cool had a one-syllable name. Everyone cool and radical had a one-syllable name. But, you know, Sean, later in that same article, one of the most amazing things he said is he said, I gave up the cheap satisfaction of the radical pose for the deep satisfaction of the radical ends. And he basically said, look, I stopped calling myself a communist, but I kept believing all of these same things. And he saw in green jobs kind of the kernel of capitalism's destruction. And I think Obama agrees with that. And if you look at all the failure around Solyndra, the wind subsidies, ethanol, and Obama's out there on the stump day after day saying we need to double down. The guy sounds like a degenerate gambler who can't recognize when he's losing, just wants to keep putting more and more of our money into this stuff. Sounds to me like he agrees with most of what Van Jones stood for, regardless of the fact that the guy resigned.
You know, I've said this because, you know, a lot of people predicted wrongly, and I can name a million names. There were very few of us that were out there after really studying Obama, his friends, and then later his appointments, and then later his policies, and now we see the results of his radical agenda. From Eric Holder to Coe and to Jennings, these were his appointments. Then we had his friends that kind of pointed in the direction, Jeffrey, that, you know, I predicted that he would go. Others got it wrong. when we look at this appointment in particular, and somebody this radical, I come to this conclusion that the president has hidden what he really believes from the American people. We get glimpses of it, San Francisco, about people in Philly and in Pennsylvania, bitter people clinging to their guns and religion, his comments to Nicolas Sarkozy, his comments to the president of Russia. Do you agree with me that the president has hidden his true opinions?
Absolutely, Sean. You know, you were one of the few people out there who were doing the vetting job that needed to be done, and that's only being done now. This is what goes on with far left wingers, and the job wasn't done there. And let me just say, right this minute, Van Jones is out there talking about clamping down on free speech. He's going after the American Legislative Exchange Council. He went after Rush Limbaugh, said he'd lost 50 sponsors when he lost 4. He's still doing this. And I might add, you know, Rush had a telethon today, raised $3 million in 3 hours. What if Rush Limbaugh had been kicked off the air by these people? What about those kids with leukemia? I mean, this is disgraceful. It's not only a free speech issue. It's not only left-wingers. It's you know, simple compassion.
And Rush has raised tens of millions of dollars, by the way. That's an important point. Let me ask you this, and I'll ask you this if I can, Phil. In 1994, he co-founded and formed a socialist collective called Standing Together to organize a revolutionary movement. It was called Storm. They held study groups on the theories of Marx and Lenin and dreamed of a multiracial socialist utopia, and he was arrested, and all of this arrest record was available to the president and those vetting as well. What happened with that? Why did they ignore that?
Well, I mean, he was swept up. He was actually a legal observer during one of the Rodney King demonstrations, so he didn't actually commit a crime. But it's interesting that he pinpointed that as sort of the turning point in his life. And obviously, he's got all of these radical associations, all of these radical ideas. He said, I didn't give up any of the radical ends, just the radical pose. I decided to become more subtle about it. And I think if you look at what happened when Van Jones left the administration, that tells you all you need to know about how other folks on the Obama left agree with everything that he believes. They just haven't been as open about it. He was embraced. Center for American Progress hired him back. Princeton gave him a teaching fellowship. NAACP gave him an Image Award. Move On hired him for this Rebuild the Dream program, and now he's an MSNBC contributor. So he's squarely in the mainstream as a communist and a 9/11 truther. He's squarely in the mainstream of Obama's Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah, you got to wonder if Brian Williams and Tom Brokaw and Matt Lauer are proud of that. Guys, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Sean.